Hi. I'm going to present some of the work that I did during my PhD on optimization under uncertainty in island aquifers. So I did this work with Jean-Michel Lemieux in Quebec City and Alexandre Prier in France. In coastal and island aquifers, seawater intrusion and saltwater upconing are major concerns for groundwater management. And that's also the case in the Magdalen Islands, which are a Canadian archipelago in the middle of the Gulf of St. Lawrence here, in which groundwater is the only source of drinking water. And groundwater resources are also stressed by intense tourism, climate change, and hydrocarbon exploration. So there was a 4-year project that was launched by the Quebec Ministry of the Environment, and that was carried out by Laval University. And one of the major objectives of this project was to determine sustainable groundwater pumping scenarios for all the archipelago. So that's what I'm going to focus on today, on how we determined sustainable groundwater pumping scenarios for all the water supply wells that we see here on this map. So just very quickly, we decided to use a sharp interface modeling approach, which is a modeling approach which simplifies physical processes of seawater intrusion because fresh and saline groundwater do not mix. But as a result, we have very fast simulation times, which allow for the implementation of parameter estimation, uncertainty quantification, etc. So in this talk, I'm going to present first the deterministic approach that we developed to implement optimization under uncertainty, and then the stochastic approach that we used to implement optimization under uncertainty, in which we also considered climate uncertainty. So for the deterministic approach, we developed a 2D model of seawater intrusion using the seawater intrusion package from Mountflow. We had 58 adjustable model parameters, which included a heterogeneous hydraulic conductivity field here that we parameterized using pilot points, and a uniform recharge rate on all land cells. So we constrained parameter estimation against 162 observations that we extracted, so freshwater head observations that we extracted from different sorts of wells, and interface observations that we extracted from wells, and inverted geophysical data. So after regularized parameter estimation with PEST HP, we did linear uncertainty analysis with PyEmu. So now for the optimization part. So first of all, we post-processed the interface simulated by Mountflow, which is the 50% seawater salinity contour, to obtain the 1% salinity contour using analytical equations. And so then when the pumping rate increases at a well, the 1% salinity gets closer and closer to the well bottom. And so we define well salinization as the moment where this 1% salinity reaches the well bottom elevation. And we conducted a single objective optimization in which we wanted to maximize the pumping in the well field, so the sum of individual pumping rates, while always avoiding well salinization. However, model predictions are uncertain, and we quantify that uncertainty. So we actually implemented optimization under uncertainty. And so with this, with optimization under uncertainty, the optimal pumping rate at a well depends on the desired reliability of the optimization. So this means that we could increase pumping at a pumping well until we have a 95% chance of no salinization, which corresponds to a reliability of 95% and a risk-averse stance. But we could also decide to continue increasing pumping until we have a 50-50% chance of well salinization. And so this is a risk-neutral stance, but we see that this might already be maybe unacceptable for management. And we could continue pumping until we have only a 5% reliability, which is a highly risk-tolerant stance. So we conducted optimization for a wide range of reliabilities using PEST++, OPT, and the chance constraints implemented in there. And so for the optimization, we always started with a steady state optimization run, which was followed by a steady state simulation with zero pumping, and then steady state optimization runs. So here are the results of the optimization under uncertainty. So here we see increasing pumping rate versus increasing probability of well salinization, or decreasing reliability of the optimization. We can map the risk averse, risk neutral, and risk tolerant areas on this figure. And so we see that when the pumping rate is increased in the well fields, the probability of salinization increases and the reliability decreases. And so with this optimization under uncertainty, we're able to quantify the trade-off between pumping and probability of salinization. And it's interesting because we don't provide the groundwater managers with a single solution. We provide them with a whole range of solutions from which they can choose the final pumping scenario depending on the level of risk that they consider to be acceptable. I just want to briefly mention the importance of data assimilation here. I'm showing the probability distribution associated with the 50% seawater salinity before parameter estimation, the dashed line versus after parameter estimation. And so we see that the predictive uncertainty was significantly reduced during parameter estimation. And as a result, so here I'm showing the same figure as before, but I added here in orange, this is the trade-off curve that we would have attained if we had prior predictive uncertainties. So if we didn't conduct data assimilation. So we see that here conducting data assimilation was really important for the management optimization under uncertainty because it changed the shape of that trade-off curve a lot. So now, briefly for the stochastic approach, I'm going to give a little overview. So this time we conducted history matching using PEST ++ IES. So from a prior parameter ensemble, we obtained a posterior parameter ensemble. This parameter ensemble contains sea level and recharge values that are representative of current or historical conditions. But we wanted to make predictions for 2050, which accounted for climate uncertainty. So we generated 2050 sea level and recharge ensembles that we then, incorporated into the posterior parameter ensemble to attain a predictive parameter ensemble. And so running the model through the predictive parameter ensemble gives an ensemble of predictions that convey both parameter, observation, but also climate uncertainty. And finally, we use these ensembles to conduct multi-objective management optimization under uncertainty. So this time we converted the optimization problem into a two-objective optimization, where the first objective was to maximize pumping and the second objective was to maximize reliability. And we solved while always avoiding well salinization. And here we solved this using PEST ++ MOU with the reliability-based option that's in there. So just a quick zoom into these 2050 sea level and recharge ensembles. So here is the current versus 2050 sea level that we had in the posterior versus the predictive parameter ensembles. So just as a reminder, the violin plot, it's a box plot to which we superimpose a density plot where width reflects frequency. So we have a median 20 centimeter sea level rise that was predicted in the area. So these are the recharge ensembles that were in the posterior versus the predictive parameter ensemble. So in red here, this recharge ensemble conveys both parameter observation, but also recharge uncertainty. And this recharge uncertainty came from running 72 temperature and precipitation scenarios through that we obtained by running those through 24 climate models times 3 different representative concentration pathway scenarios. So we merged all that information together, and we see that In 2050, compared to current conditions, the median value didn't change at all in recharge, but the uncertainty in recharge more than doubled. And this impacted the results of the optimization. So here I'm showing a similar sort of figure where we have increasing pumping rate in the well fields versus increasing probability of salinization with when we neglect climate change in blue and when we consider climate change in red. And I also superimposed the probability distribution of the projected water demand here in green. So first of all, when we consider climate uncertainty, to conserve identical probabilities of salinization in the well fields, the pumping rates must be lowered. So this is what I'm showing here. If we want to keep a probability of salinization of 10% in the well fields, the pumping rate must be divided by 2. Also, if we had neglected climate uncertainty, so if we had gone from data assimilation straight to management optimization without adding the climate uncertainty, we would have underestimated the probability of well salinization associated with different pumping scenarios. For example, here, for a total pumping rate of 100 cubic meters per day, if we had neglected climate uncertainty, that would have corresponded to a 5% probability of salinization, when actually it corresponds to a 10 to 15% chance of salinization. And it's also interesting to use this to understand the ability of the well field to simultaneously satisfy the current and projected water demand while maintaining low probabilities of well salinization. For example, here, we saw that when we consider climate uncertainty, we aren't able to satisfy even the lowest projections of water demand in 2050, while keeping low probabilities of salinization within the existing well field. So to conclude, we developed these scripted methodologies that are all shared on GitHub for management optimization under uncertainty, both using a deterministic and a stochastic ensemble-based approach. And we implemented the deterministic approach in all of the Magdalen Islands archipelago. And so that deterministic optimization under uncertainty, we applied it to the four main islands that have public water supply wells, so which are the figures I'm showing here. And we transferred all the results to decision makers, like in a big scientific report, a groundwater atlas, and multiple meetings and workshops to transfer the results as best as we could. And so there are limitations to what we did, but I wanted to focus the discussion on the optimization under uncertainty. So first of all, I said that with this method, the groundwater managers can choose the pumping scenario they want, depending on the probability of salinization that is acceptable. But what is an acceptable probability of salinization? Is it 2%? Is it 3%? Is it 10%? Sorry, I keep mixing these up. So what would help would be not only to characterize the probability of salinization, but the risk, which is the probability times the consequence. So for example, looking at the cost of salinization. Also, identifying the Pareto frontier here, I think it looks pretty, it's cool, but it's super computationally costly. It took 86,000 runs to get each of these Pareto fronts that I was showing you, when in general, the groundwater managers are more likely going to be highly risk averse. So it would be really nice if we had a sort of method or option where we could focus all of our computational efforts on the highly risk averse area. And finally, when we consider climate uncertainty, we may always be underestimating climate uncertainty, because even if we use every available global climate model and every available RCP, that's still going to be a subset of possible futures. So another way to look at this problem could be to add robustness to climate uncertainty in the optimization. And this means that the optimization would try to find pumping scenarios which are the least sensitive to the uncertainty in groundwater recharge and in groundwater and in sea level rise. So that was it. Thanks for your attention, and thank you to all these people.
Thank you very much, Cécile. Any questions?
Not wanting to hog the mic, but thanks, Cécile, again. I've seen this before, of course, but now that you showed it again, if you want to focus your assessment of that Pareto frontier at that level of risk, could you not simply set a constraint on your risk and say, only look at anything which is below or above X%?
That's a great idea, yeah. Should try that.
Are you currently working on the climate robustness question, or is it sort of like a wish list item that you'd like to do if you get a chance?
I like to do it if I have a chance, or if anyone wants to do it. It's been done in other fields. I didn't make this up, so it's just applying it, and groundwater related stuff would be cool.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. Just a quick question. Can you explain why the curve in the on your result in the beginning it's like you can pump more and it doesn't change too much the answer on the risk of salinization, and then if you add a bit of pumping it's like it's increased a lot and then it's slow down again? But just curious about that shape.
I think the shape will be different in each optimization problem. It's probably due to the shape of the my constraint ensemble. That's a good question, but I think it's interesting because you can see that, I don't know, sometimes for small increases in pumping, you can have big increases in salinization, and sometimes it's the opposite. So I think that's just linked to the shape of the uncertainty.
Okay, thank you.
One more.
So looking at your stochastic results, it sounds like it might not be possible. I know the percentage of the possibility of salinization is low, but it sounds like it's real. Maybe the results of work like this might be not that you can avoid it, but that you should be preparing for it. In other words, start to think about your infrastructure, start to think about your funding mechanisms to begin to do treatment at some point in the future, which would be a valuable result as well, I would think.
Yeah, it is. I think it shows if you want to either increase the pumping in your well field but increase the probability of salinization, or you can decide to keep the probability of salinization low in your existing well field but try to find other sources of water. But then, also I don't know if they would want to make decisions now based on 2050 climate conditions. I don't know, but it brings up a lot of interesting questions.
Thank you very much, Cécile.
Thanks.